Well, thank you for choosing this podcast. This is Coming Out Stories with me, Emma Goswell. It's brought to you by What Goes On Media, and we bring you brand new, inspiring LGBTQ+ coming out stories every fortnight. Now, since we last chatted, we've had some rather exciting news about our book, Coming Out Stories. It has had its first translation. A big thank you to Riley Publishers, because our book is now available in Welsh. Diolch. Don't worry, it is still available in English as well, if you don't speak Welsh. Right, really excited to bring you this next episode. We are heading back stateside to meet Dharma. She's a trans woman and a crime writer. Let's start by finding out how she identifies.
I am transgender, lesbian, pansexual, lesbisexual.
Well, there's a lot going on there then. There's a lot to unpick. Yeah. Great. I shall look forward to this conversation then. I'm wondering where to start. I mean, you used the word pansexual there. I'm guessing that's a word that you've used more recently. It was a word that wasn't around even 5 years ago, particularly. It wasn't very common.
I guess I'm primarily attracted to women, and I've been married to my wife for, this will be 25 years. But prior to that, I was married to a man for about 3 years. And, parts is parts, I fall in love with a person, so...
And it sounds like you've been lucky enough to fall in love with people who are of the same opinion, and they fall in love with the person, they fall in love with you.
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's go back to the beginning then. Let's go back to childhood, shall we? I mean, you don't have to give your exact age, but maybe tell us where in the world we're talking about, where you grew up and what decade.
I grew up in a small town outside of Atlanta, a little place called Snellville.
Never heard of that, sorry.
Never heard of that. Nope, most people don't. It was kind of a semi-rural town. I was born in the mid-'60s, so, I knew at the age of 5, like right around 1970, 71, that I was different. It really hit home first grade. They let us out for recess, and the teacher said, okay, all the girls go down the hill to play jump rope and play house and all that stuff, and all the boys go up the hill to play kickball or whatever. And I instinctively started going out with the girls because I just felt like I fit in with them better than I fit in with the boys. Girls made sense to me,
And you enjoyed playing skipping ropes and playing house, yeah.
Yeah. And the teacher said, no. You got to go up the hill with the rest of the boys. I'm like, I'm not a boy. And from that point on, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong, why I felt like a girl, but it was a secret I kept for a very, very long time. And then puberty hit, and I'd sneak into my mother's bedroom and cross-dress in secret when I could. And the thing that really struck me when I did that, I thought it would feel strange and bizarre and perverted, and it felt right. I couldn't explain, but it felt like this is who I should be. I didn't know the language for transgender or transsexual or anything like that.
And this would have been the 70s or 80s at
Yeah,
this
this would have been, late 70s, early 80s, getting into high school, and I just couldn't understand who I was. But, I thought, well, I must be gay or something because I didn't have any other language to describe it. And it wasn't until shortly after college that I realized who and what I was.
Just to rewind back to primary school, when you said that you felt different, did the other kids pick up on this at all? Did they work it out? Did they say stuff to you?
Oh, yeah. First of all, I was a year younger than most of my classmates. They just started me early, and I was also small for my age, so that didn't help.
Kids will pick on anything, won't they, basically?
Exactly. And I was very emotionally sensitive and everything like that. And they picked up on it as smear the queer, I didn't even know what the word queer meant. I knew that I was different. And I was targeted and bullied all through from first grade to high school graduation.
And are we talking verbal stuff? Like you used the word queer there, which was definitely not thought of the same way as it is now, but was it mainly verbal or other stuff as well?
Mostly verbal. I got beaten up a few times. I have my stuff stolen or destroyed or something like that. People breaking into my lockers or something like that. And it was just harassment.
And was this something that you felt able to report to the teachers or to anybody?
No. And I talked to my mother about it, and she said, well, just don't react to them. They're looking for a reaction. They're more scared of you than you are of them, which is bullshit.
And I'm assuming they were bullying you because they were picking up on your femininity and they were teasing you for being feminine.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, swishy, super feminine, like that, but I wasn't also very masculine. I was very slight. I had a very high voice, and I just didn't fit in with the guys. And they knew that. They could tell.
And did you have lots of friends with the girls, though? Lots of friendships?
I was kind of a loner, so I just kind of kept to myself. I was a nerd, too, so I was a geeky, kind of nerdy, math team, high school newspaper, marching band.
Oh, wow. I don't think we have math teams in the UK. This seems like a very American thing. I don't know. Well, or maybe I was just excluded from that group because I would never have made the grade.
Super nerdy.
Yeah. So did things improve at all once you'd left school? Well, I mean, you must have felt very isolated as a teenager then.
Things got better in college. I went to a major university. I went to the University of Georgia, big state college, and I managed to find some friends. And I didn't have to deal with a lot of the bullying anymore, which was a nice relief. And I had a few relationships in college that one ended up becoming a very short-lived marriage to a woman. But at the same time, I was really struggling with my gender dysphoria and just feeling like a stranger in my skin. And I just couldn't make sense of it.
And at that time, in the 70s and 80s, you wouldn't have known any other trans people.
The only thing, you occasionally hear a joke about Christine Jorgensen on a sitcom as the butt of a joke,
I don't know who that is.
Christine Jorgensen was a transgender woman. She was served in the U.S. Army. This is back in like the 40s, I guess. Maybe 50s, and she actually went to Scandinavia somewhere and had gender reassignment surgery.
Wow.
And she's like one of the first, and she kind of became kind of a celebrity. She was kind of in the socialite crowd for a while.
A trailblazer.
Yeah, she was. But, she also became the butt of jokes, too. So, it wasn't until Caroline Cossey, who is a British model and actress, she did a spread in some men's magazine. I can't remember if it was Playboy or Penthouse or something like that. And that's not a magazine I normally would buy or get or anything like that.
Yeah.
But when she did that, this was in I'd say 85, 86, sometime around there. And as soon as she did that, I immediately connected, this is who I am. This is what I am. I still didn't know any other trans people at the time. I mean, this was Georgia, 1980s.
Right.
Very conservative, very redneck.
And you're in your 20s by now.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s. And so I just searched for any information I could find about what it meant to be transgender. And I checked books out of the library, and I searched.
I'm going to guess there weren't a lot, though.
No, there wasn't a lot. There were a few minor things, a few books, a few like nonfiction talking about the history or something, but nothing I could really connect to. I'd look up magazine articles. I would search our local weekly alternative newspaper for anything like of a trans support group, and I didn't find it for the longest time. And then finally, I uncovered a listing in our local phone book, just a one-line listing saying transsexual support group. And I called it.
Wow.
And that was really the beginning of my journey.
Wow. What was that phone call like?
Scary as hell. I was married to a woman, and I reached out, and they put me in touch with a therapist that was familiar with trans issues. And while I was trying to sort all of that out, my then wife caught me cross-dressed, and our marriage pretty much fell apart right from there.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Did you open up to your wife and tell her about how you were feeling?
When she caught me
Ah,
cross-dressed in her clothes, of course. And that was very painful for all involved.
so that
And
was the end of the relationship because of
that
that.
was it. Yep, she moved out and never came back.
It's a very difficult thing for partners to get their head around, especially, I guess, when they haven't got any frame of reference and it's,
Right,
the 1980s.
right. Yep, exactly.
But that's very hurtful for you.
Yeah, it was. It was hard. She did what she had to do for her, and I did what I had to do for me. But that's where my journey started. I moved out. I moved into a little apartment in rural Georgia with this very flamboyant gay man,
Oh, great.
and started joining this support group and just began the journey. Went on hormones and
And was that relatively easy, or did that involve a lot of effort and a lot of money, I guess, to suddenly get your hand on hormones and...
the support group put me in touch with an endocrinologist that was fairly supportive, so that wasn't too difficult. Eventually, it got to the point where my body started changing, and my employer, I worked for a car rental company at the time, and
Okay.
they were not supportive, and they said you can either stay a man and continue to work for us, or you can transition and we can part ways.
And that would have been, and probably is in some places, in some states, totally legal, right?
Oh yeah, still legal.
Still legal to do that.
Still legal. In fact, probably becoming more legal as the far right continues to push back and pass laws against us. So it was hard. About that same time, I started dating my now ex-husband, and I moved in with him. He had dated a trans woman before, so we met through mutual friends, and that wasn't an issue. And for the first couple of years, we got along really well. And then we both lost our jobs right before Christmas. And this was like 1995, I think. And we knew somebody in Phoenix. So I said, well, I've never lived anywhere but Atlanta, so let's move to Phoenix. So we
Yay!
did.
And you never left.
And I got a job right away as a woman, thankfully. He didn't right away, and he struggled for a while, and our marriage became abusive and alcoholic, and both of us were alcoholics. I was codependent. He was abusive, and it took a suicide attempt for me to get sober and to get my shit together.
God, well, thank God that you did, and that you're still here to tell that story then, darling.
I know. Every day since then, it's been like 26 years, and every day has been a gift. Not always easy, but it's been a gift.
And do you think, in a way, it was a blessing to move away and have that distance from everyone that you knew? Because I certainly know of trans people in the UK, even though it's a smaller country, who have moved across the country to, just to make a new start and have people around them that they know.
It was a big adjustment. After getting fired from my previous job, I floundered. I mean, I did some things that I'm not proud of that were not completely legal, just to survive, just to have some sort of income. But you got to do what you got to do, And when I got a legitimate job here in Phoenix, that made a big difference for me. And I stayed with them for several years, and that was a good start. And eventually, after being in Phoenix about a year, I managed to get my reassignment surgery. Funny thing is that I went to a surgeon in Portland, Oregon, which is up in the American Northwest. Later, a few years later, that surgeon moved to Scottsdale, Arizona.
Funny enough, I'm drinking out of a glass that says Portland on it because I have been. It's a great place. Funny. How funny. I've just realised.
It's a beautiful city. I love Portland. And having had my surgery there, it has a lot of fond memories for me. And that was tough because I went all by myself. I didn't have anybody to go with me. And so it was a challenge, but I met the challenge and I got through it.
And also, it's a long journey from, that initial phone call that you made to that transsexual helpline to actually getting your surgery. We're talking a couple of decades down the line by the sounds of it.
Well, let's see, from the time I knew that I was a girl at age 5 to the time I got my surgery was about 2 decades, yeah.
Yeah.
But the time my wife caught me to the time that I got my surgery was about 5 years, I guess.
Yeah. But it's just worth pointing out, isn't it? Because, the TERFs and people who can't cope with trans people seem to be under the misapprehension that you decide one day and then, you have gender reassignment surgery the next day, and it's nothing could be further from the truth, really. No. So we haven't touched on telling family members or, actually coming out as trans. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah. After my wife discovered, then I told my parents, and I have 2 siblings, both younger, a brother and a sister, and none of them were supportive at the time. My mother said, "You will be an ugly woman and you're an abomination, and after all I've done for you, this is how you repay me." All those classic lines.
Yeah, it's all about them.
It's all about them. What will the neighbors think? It's just like, I'm trying to live my life the best way I know how. I'm suffering. This is the most vulnerable time in my life, and you're turning your back to me. It was hard. It was very difficult. But I found a lot of solace in the support group. First of all, knowing I wasn't the only person going through it. It was a lot like going through puberty again. Your body is changing, doing weird things. Your parents don't get you. Your hormones are going crazy. It's puberty all over again.
It must be mad stuff. I mean, I'm on HRT, so I can't even imagine the effect of hormones going through a transition as well. But it must do a lot to your mind as well as your body, right?
It does. I mean, having a therapist that understood things helped a lot. I mean, there was a lot of trauma to deal with, a lot of loss, a lot of grieving, a lot of fear. When I moved in with my husband, I was living in a district in Georgia where they passed an anti-gay bill, basically. It didn't have any teeth in it, but it just said that gay lifestyle is not consistent with our family values or something like that. At the time, I was reading a book, I forget the author's name, but the name of the book was The Last Jews in Berlin. And it was talking about how some Jews managed to survive in Nazi Berlin during the occupation, and I felt that I could really identify with that, because I dove back into the closet as a trans woman. I had the privilege of being able to pass pretty well, so I tried to keep that part of my history quiet for a while.
And did your mum come round? Did your siblings come round?
She eventually came round. We've never had that heart-to-heart talk. Our family's kind of dysfunctional anyway. We don't talk about things. My mother has always been the kind of poster child for gaslighting.
Oh, God.
Yeah, codependency and all that things, and manipulation. But we've been estranged and then back in contact off and on through the decades. We're currently in contact with each other. I'm in contact with my sister as well. I haven't talked to my brother in 30 years. Because of this? Because of your transition? Because of this, yes. Uh-huh. Gosh. Yeah, he didn't, he's one of these holier than thou, evangelical, whatever.
It's such a shame, isn't it? It's just so sad.
Yeah. I've learned to live with it because there's nothing I can do about it. And, I live a very fulfilled life now. My wife and I have been together for 25 years.
Well, let's talk about meeting her. That sounds exciting. It's
quite a story. When we first met, it was through a trans support group here in Phoenix. We were just met at a restaurant. And at the time, I was still married to my ex-husband. I was still with him. And then a year later, I had since separated from him, still married to him, but we had separated. I was living my new life. I was dating other people and everything, and sober and happy. And a bunch of people in the support group were supposed to get together for dinner. And at the last second, everybody but the two of us canceled.
Ah,
Turns out we were set up on a date. I didn't know.
they all set you up.
They set us up.
Oh,
I think my wife is in on it too.
Oh, wow.
And so we went on a date, we went out to dinner, and it was nice. And at the time, she lived in Tucson, which is about 100 miles southeast of us. So we only saw each other on weekends. And after that, we met up for coffee once. And then after that, she sent me an email saying, "I'm looking for a girlfriend. Would you like the job?" And I'm like, ugh. And all these red flags shot up because it's like, okay, I'm a year sober. So I'm like still working out relationship issues, still legally married to my husband, even though we were separated and I had no intention of going back to him. She was 15 years older than me, lives 100 miles away from me. So it's a long distance relationship. I'm like, I don't think this would work.
I'm going to guess there were more reasons to say yes.
You know, I eventually said yes. I kind of checked in with my higher power and everything and I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go. And I'm glad I did.
So then for the first time, you were a lesbian?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, while I was with my ex-husband, we had separated another time and I dated a woman. So I knew I was interested in both men and women. But I was definitely in a lesbian relationship, and my wife is also transgender. We actually got legally married 5 months after we started dating because she got her surgery, her reassignment surgery, right after our honeymoon. So she was biologically male when we got married, even though she had a female name and living as a woman and everything. I've only known her as Eileen.
What does the law say? So did she have her correct name on on your marriage certificate?
Yeah, they tried to push back when we were applying for the marriage license, but we proved that she still had. We showed her birth certificate and said she was assigned male at birth. She hasn't had any surgery, so there was no legal reason that they could deny us. And then when they tried to put her old male name on the marriage certificate, she said, no, that's not my legal name. I legally changed my name to Eileen. And they said, well, we can't put two women's names together. And to my wife's credit, she said, if my name were Farkle, could you put that name on the on the marriage certificate or not? Where's the list of names you can and cannot put on the... And they said, oh, okay, that is your legal name. And they did.
Oh, so was this before marriage equality then?
Yes.
Because you would have been legally a man and a woman?
Yeah, according to them.
Yeah, you have to know the timelines for this story. Okay, so you're legally a man and a woman.
Well, at the time. And then on our honeymoon, we went to Thailand where she got her surgery. So less than a week after we got married, now she's legally female.
Wow, but at least you got the right names on the marriage certificate.
We got the right names. We got the actual marriage certificate issued by the government. They can't take it back.
Incredible. That properly is two fingers up to the establishment, isn't it? In
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank God we've got marriage equality now, though. Well,
yes, for now. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about being out and proud, because you mentioned a little while ago about having to go back in the closet because of a certain law, but it's very important for you in your work to be openly transgender, isn't it? Why is that?
Well, I'm an author. I write crime thrillers.
You've written lots of crime thrillers.
About a dozen of them so far.
Wow.
And, and I'm one of just a handful of openly trans crime thriller authors. And I feel it's important to represent my community because, one, it gives trans people a hero that's like them. So
your main character is a trans woman?
Yeah, I've written 3 different series, and 2 of those series have a trans protagonist. One of them, my first series, has a cisgender protagonist, but she's a lesbian. So, and there are other trans characters in them. So,
I need to read these books. Which one should I start with? Do you think?
I would recommend starting with Chaser. That's the first book in my Jinx Baloo Bounty Hunter series, and Jinx is something else. She's a lot of fun.
The Jinx Boo Bounty Hunter series sounds awesome. I'm totally going to read these. It sounds brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing. And how do your audience, how do your readers react to your trans characters?
Most of them, I would say overwhelmingly, they like it. And I have a lot of cisgender readers as well. So basically, my goal was I didn't want the stories to center around my character being trans. I mean, it shapes her experience, but it doesn't define her experience. So I'm not writing coming out stories. I'm not writing romance. I'm not writing transition stories. But sometimes, every once in a while, her being trans plays a part in the story.
I mean, they've got to be page turners, haven't they? You've got to go for the plot, haven't you? And then fall in love with the character, despite the fact
first and foremost crime thrillers. You know, she's a bounty hunter. She's going after people that have jumped bail or had their bail bond revoked, and so she's going after the bad guys and trying to figure out where they are and who they're involved with. And there's lots of violence and gunplay, car chases, and fights.
Excellent.
It's basically like Jack Reacher, that level of intensity, but she just happens to also be trans. Because I enjoy those kind of stories. I enjoy reading those kind of stories, so that's what I write.
And it's important to have trans role models, right? It's important to have all sorts of LGBT role models.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of cisgender people saying, I never realized that trans people went through that or dealt with issues like that. Because in the first book, one of the things that happens is she gets outed by a local newspaper, and she loses the job that she had with one of the bail bond agents. And so now she's desperately trying to find work and just dealing with the issues of being trans.
Which, as we know, happens. People lose their jobs, unbelievably.
It does. I mean, I lost my job. You know, one of the differences between me and Jinx is that she had a supportive family. And so they were able to help her transition when she was a lot younger than I was when I transitioned. I've got another series that I'm writing the second book in about a goth tattoo artist who is also trans, and she's kind of a vigilante helping out her friends who get into trouble. And she was more like me. She got kind of turned away by her family, and she had to make do on her own. And so I tried to make the two characters very different experiences, because every trans person has a unique experience. Societal attitudes have changed sometimes, and sometimes they don't, you know, depending. So
she sounds kick-ass. I like the sound.
Oh, she is. She's wicked.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that you started this interview by saying, oh, let's try not to mention she who shall not be named. And I won't mention her name, but I'll leave people to read between the lines. But, you know, that must make you so angry as a writer that, you know, the most published female writer on the planet is so anti-trans.
I know. I mean, I consider her, I mean, in a semi-joking manner, my arch enemy, because now she's writing crime fiction, and she's writing stuff that still portrays trans people as evil and a threat to society, and as bigots as the victims in all of this. And she's getting these big book deals and all this praise, especially, you know, by the British press as well. She's got this new podcast where she's like, oh, the witch hunt of J.K. Rowling. There, I mentioned her.
You did. Unfortunately, you said the name, like Voldemort, so you'll probably explode now.
Yeah.
It's just sad, isn't it, really? But there's a big backlash against her in this country, and I think, you know, hopefully that history will prove that she and her sidekicks and all the TERFs are on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I can't change her, but I can represent and speak out on behalf of my community. And the great thing about writing novels is, in stories, you get drawn into the plot and the story and the characters. And along the way, hopefully you see in our humanity in that. It's one of the reasons why I read a lot of stories by people of color. Mia Manansala, Kelly Garrett, S.A. Cosby, Gabino Iglesias. I mean, these are all crime authors of color that I love their work. They write great stuff. And it helps to educate me about their worldview and their experiences. And I think that helps to make the world a better place, because we can see each other's humanity despite our differences.
I love that, Dharma. I should probably end it there, but I do like to end with my favourite final question, which is just advice to people who maybe haven't come out yet, who haven't been brave enough to accept their gender identity in particular.
It's okay to wait until you feel safe because there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of animosity. Do what you got to do, but at the same time, if you start to feel suicidal, get help, reach out, because there are people, you're not alone, and we've all been there. There's somebody that's been through what you've been through, and we're here to help.
Thank you so much to Dharma for chatting to me. And I do feel like a broken record when I say this. I cannot believe it is still possible to get fired for your gender identity. She's right. We need to carry on fighting for all the rights that we have, because in so many countries things are going backwards and rights are being eroded. Do check out her books, of course, especially the Jinx Blue Bounty Hunter series. How good does that sound? You'll find more information at her website, Dharma Kelleher, that's DharmaKelleher.com. She's also Dharma Kelleher on Instagram as well. Now, you really don't want to miss our next episode when we head to Bermuda to meet Valentino. In the 1980s, he really risked his own personal safety to meet other gay men.
I stopped going to school and I started to frequent tea rooms, go to the public toilets. Those are called tea rooms. Because it's Bermuda, we had cruise ships, we had Her Majesty's Royal Navy, we had the dock workers, because they used to bring freight in on the docks and stuff. And at each one of these ports was a toilet. And I had 2 cubicles, toilet things. At the partition, there was a hole. You know what the hole was for.